I stand in the courthouse hallway, 15 years after being abandoned. My parents and 2 siblings sit across from me, dressed in their best clothes, looking hopeful. They don't know what's coming. I hold a folder containing evidence that will destroy their lawsuit. They're suing me for financial support, claiming I owe them for raising me. The irony burns. They left me with nothing but a note at 17. Now they want millions. My lawyer touches my shoulder, and we walk into the courtroom where justice will finally be served. Let me take you back 15 years. Back to when I was 17, in the spring of my senior year at Lincoln High School in suburban Pennsylvania. My name is Vernon, and I thought I had a normal family. Not perfect, but normal enough. My father, Greg, worked at an insurance company downtown. Same job for 12 years. He wore cheap ties and complained about his boss every night at dinner. My mother, Linda, was a part-time nurse at a pediatric clinic, always smelling faintly of hand sanitizer and telling stories about sick kids. My older sister, Amber, was 21, living at home after dropping out of college her sophomore year. She spent most of her time on her phone or watching reality television. My younger brother, Justin, was 15, obsessed with basketball, always bouncing a ball somewhere in the house. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom ranch house with beige siding and a small yard that Dad never quite kept up with. The lawn was always a little too long, the paint always a little too faded. But it was home. I was what everyone called the good kid. Honor roll every semester since freshman year. Never missed a day of work at Patterson's hardware store, where I stocked shelves and helped customers find the right screws or paint colors. I made $9 an hour and worked 20 hours a week, sometimes more. I had a girlfriend named Stephanie with blonde hair and a bright smile. We talked about going to community college together in the fall. Nothing fancy, just the local 2-year school where tuition was affordable. I had saved $3,000. Every paycheck, I put half into an envelope I kept in my bedroom drawer. $3,000 felt like a fortune to me then. It was going to cover my first year's tuition, books, and maybe a used car if I was lucky. I was so proud of that money. I had earned every single dollar. My family knew about my savings. I had told them at dinner one night, excited, thinking they would be proud too. Dad had nodded. Mom had smiled. Amber had rolled her eyes and said something about me being a nerd. Justin had asked if I would buy him new basketball shoes. Normal family stuff. I trusted them completely. Why wouldn't I? They were my family. I remember the last normal dinner we had together. It was a Thursday night in late April. Mom made spaghetti with jarred sauce. Nothing special. Dad complained about a client who kept calling him about a claim. Amber was texting someone and barely touched her food. Justin talked nonstop about basketball tryouts coming up. I mentioned that I had gotten accepted into the community college's business program. Mom hugged me extra long that night after dinner. She held my shoulders and looked into my eyes and said, "You're going to do great things, Vernon. I just know it." I thought she meant college. I thought she was being a proud mom. I went to bed that night feeling good, feeling secure, planning my future, thinking about Stephanie, about classes starting in August, about maybe getting an apartment with a roommate by my second year. Normal 17-year-old dreams. I had no idea that in less than 12 hours, my entire world would shatter. I woke up Saturday morning to complete silence. That should have been my first clue. Our house was never silent on Saturday mornings. Justin always had cartoons blaring. Mom always had coffee brewing. Dad always had talk radio on in the kitchen. Amber always slept until noon, but you could hear her snoring through the walls. But that morning, nothing. Just silence so thick it felt wrong. I climbed out of bed and walked into the hallway. The house felt empty in a way I had never experienced before. Not just quiet, but hollow. I called out, "Mom? Dad?" Nothing. I walked through the house, my bare feet cold on the laminate flooring. Justin's room was empty, his bed made, which never happened. Amber's room was empty too. Clothes scattered on the floor, but all her important stuff gone. I noticed her makeup bag missing from the bathroom counter. I went to my parents' room. The bed was made. Dad's side of the closet was empty. Hangers dangled bare. Mom's jewelry box was gone from the dresser. My heart started pounding. Something was very, Very wrong. I walked to the living room. The family photos that had hung on the walls were gone, just nail holes and lighter patches on the paint where frames had been. The bookshelf still had books, but Mom's collection of ceramic angels was missing. Dad's favorite recliner sat in the corner, but I realized now that most of the smaller furniture was gone. Then I saw it. On the kitchen table, a single piece of notebook paper, the edges torn rough, weighted down by my house key. My hands shook as I picked it up. The handwriting was my mother's, the same loopy cursive she used for grocery lists. Vernon, we've decided to start fresh somewhere new. You're almost 18, and you've always been independent. You'll figure it out. The house is rented. Landlord knows we're gone. You have until end of month. Good luck, Mom and Dad. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. The words didn't make sense. They arranged themselves into sentences, but the meaning refused to sink into my brain. Start fresh somewhere new. You'll figure it out. End of month. They left me. My family left me. I stumbled to my bedroom, still holding the note. Everything of mine was still there. My clothes, my books, my alarm clock, my backpack. They had taken nothing of mine, but they had also left me nothing of theirs. Then I saw it. My dresser drawer, the second one down where I kept the envelope. It was pulled open about 2 inches, something I never did. I always closed my drawers completely. I yanked it open all the way. Shirts and socks tumbled out. I dug through them frantically. The envelope was there, white and wrinkled. I grabbed it, already knowing, already feeling the emptiness. I tore it open anyway. Empty. $3,000. Gone. I found the envelope on the floor of my parents' closet, torn and discarded. They had taken my money. They had stolen from me, and then abandoned me. I don't remember the next few minutes clearly. I think I screamed. I know I cried. I called my mother's cell phone. Disconnected. My father's cell phone. Disconnected. Amber's phone. Disconnected. Even Justin's phone, the number I had texted 100 times. Disconnected. They had planned this. Cut off every way for me to reach them. I sat on the floor of the empty living room and cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I called Stephanie. She answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? I couldn't speak. I just sobbed. Vernon. Vernon. What's wrong? Are you okay? They left. I finally managed. They're gone. All of them. Stephanie and her parents arrived 20 minutes later. Ron and Carol stood in the kitchen reading the note over and over, their faces twisted in disbelief and anger. Stephanie held my hand so tight my fingers went numb. This is child abandonment, Ron said. He was a mechanic, a big man with grease permanently under his fingernails. This is illegal. We should call the police. I'm almost 18, I said quietly. In 6 weeks, I'm legally an adult. The police won't care. Carol, a small woman who worked at the public library, touched my shoulder gently. Vernon, honey, you can stay with us for a while. We'll figure something out. But I saw the look she exchanged with Ron. They had 3 kids of their own. Their house was small. Their money was tight. They wanted to help, but they couldn't take on another kid long term. I'll be okay, I said, even though I had no idea if that was true. I have 17 days until the landlord evicts me. I'll figure something out. That phrase, I'll figure it out. The same words my mother had left me with, now coming out of my own mouth. That night, I slept alone in the empty house. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like someone coming back. But no one came back. I found the second note the next morning. I was taking out the trash, numb and mechanical, when I saw it wedged under an empty cereal box. Notebook paper, torn rough, written in pencil and handwriting I recognized as Justin's. I'm sorry, Vernon. They made me pack too. I didn't want to leave you. Dad said you were holding them back. I'm scared. Justin. The note was dated from 2 days before they left. Thursday. The day of that last spaghetti dinner. They had been planning this for at least 2 days, probably longer. Making Justin pack, telling him I was holding them back. I was 17 years old. I had $53 in my wallet, no family, No savings, no plan, but sitting there on the floor next to the garbage can, holding my little brother's frightened apology, I made a decision. I wasn't going to just survive this. I was going to build something they could never touch. Something they could never take from me. I didn't know how yet, but I would figure it out. I moved out of the rental house on day 16, one day before the landlord would have forced me out. I had found a room to rent from an elderly man named Walter, who lived 3 miles away in an older neighborhood. Walter was 78, a retired plumber with arthritis in his hands, and a wife who had died 2 years earlier. His house smelled like coffee and old newspapers. The room was small, barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser, but it was $250 a month, and Walter said I could use the kitchen. I worked 40 hours a week at Patterson's hardware store and finished my senior year. I walked across the graduation stage in June, wearing a borrowed robe because I couldn't afford to buy one. Stephanie sat with her family in the audience. She had been distant lately, and I knew why. Dating me had become complicated, heavy with pain I couldn't hide. I had applied for financial aid for community college, but without my parents' tax information, the process was a nightmare. I filled out forms claiming I was an independent student due to abandonment. It required documentation I didn't have. A social worker interviewed me twice. By August, I was told I might qualify for aid by the spring semester, but fall was impossible. Stephanie broke up with me in September. We were sitting in her car outside Walter's house. She cried while she said it. "Vernon, I care about you so much, but this relationship has too much heaviness now. You're different. You're angry all the time, even when you're trying not to be. And I'm leaving for college next week. I think we both need a fresh start." I understood. I didn't blame her. I had become someone else, someone harder, someone who woke up at 5 in the morning and didn't stop moving until midnight, someone who counted every penny and trusted no one. "I hope things get better for you," she said. And I knew she meant it. You deserve better than what they did to you. After she drove away, I went inside and asked Walter if he needed any help around the house. Walter looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "Son, you don't have to earn your keep every second. You already paid rent." "I know," I said, "but I need to stay busy." Walter taught me plumbing that fall. Basic stuff at first. How to replace a faucet washer, how to snake a drain, how to fix a running toilet. His hands shook too much to do the work himself anymore, but his mind was sharp. He talked me through every step. "You got good hands for this work," he told me one Saturday afternoon. We were replacing the pipes under his kitchen sink. Steady, patient. That's what plumbing needs. By winter, I had picked up a second job doing night janitorial work at an office building downtown. I worked at the hardware store from 7 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, went home and slept for 2 hours, then cleaned offices from 6 at night until midnight. I was working 70 to 80 hours a week, sleeping 4 to 5 hours nightly. I lost 15 pounds. Walter started leaving sandwiches in the fridge for me with notes that said, "Eat this," but I was saving money. Every paycheck, half went into a new envelope. This one I kept in a locked box under my bed. Walter's former clients started calling the house. They knew Walter couldn't do plumbing work anymore, but they trusted him. He started recommending me for small jobs, a leaky pipe here, a clogged drain there. I charged half what a real plumber would charge, but I was reliable and I did good work. One of Walter's clients was a man named Raymond, a real estate investor in his 50s who owned several rental properties around the city. I fixed a busted water heater in one of his units on a Sunday morning. Raymond watched me work, asking questions, seeing how I approached problems. "You're what, 19?" he asked when I finished. "Yes, sir." "You in school?" "No, sir. Working." "You like working on houses?" I thought about it. I like fixing things. I like making something broken work again. Raymond nodded slowly. "I could use someone like you. Property maintenance, renovation work, general handyman stuff. Pay would be $15 an hour to start, full-time, benefits after 90 days. You interested?" I quit both my other jobs and started working for Raymond the following Monday. It was the first time since my family left that something felt like it was going right. Raymond became more than a boss. He became a mentor. He taught me everything about real estate investing, how to evaluate properties, how to estimate renovation costs, how to manage tenants, how to leverage debt and build equity. He let me sit in on meetings with contractors, banks, and inspectors. He explained every decision he made and asked what I would have done differently. Real estate isn't about getting rich quick, Raymond told me during a long drive to look at a foreclosure property. It's about patience, consistency, and treating people right. You do those three things. You build something that lasts. I saved aggressively. I lived on almost nothing. Rented the same small room from Walter for $250 a month. Ate cheap food. Wore clothes from thrift stores. Every extra dollar went into that locked box under my bed. By the time I was 22, I had saved $30,000. Raymond helped me find my first property. A duplex in a rough neighborhood, completely run down, bank owned after a foreclosure. It needed everything. New roof, new plumbing, new electrical, new flooring. The bank was asking $45,000. Raymond helped me negotiate down to $38,000. I put down $10,000 and got a loan for the rest. I spent 6 months renovating that duplex myself. I did the plumbing. I learned electrical work from a retired electrician Raymond knew. I learned carpentry from YouTube videos and trial and error. I worked nights and weekends, every spare moment. Raymond stopped by sometimes to check my work, offer advice, bring me coffee. When I finished, that duplex was beautiful. I rented both units within a week. The rental income covered the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and gave me $300 a month in positive cash flow. I was 22 years old and I owned a property that was making me money while I slept. Over the next 10 years, I repeated that process. I found distressed properties, bought them below market value, renovated them myself or with small crews I hired and supervised, then rented them out or sold them for a profit. I reinvested every dollar. I lived modestly. I built slowly and carefully. Raymond taught me to treat tenants with respect and dignity. These are people's homes, he said. Treat them like you'd want to be treated. When tenants struggled with rent, I worked with them. When things broke, I fixed them fast. When people were honest with me, I was flexible. Word spread. Good tenants wanted to rent from me. Property managers wanted to work with me. Banks trusted me. By age 32, I owned 43 rental properties across 3 states, worth approximately $12 million. My properties generated $70,000 monthly in net income after all expenses. I had built an empire from nothing, from that torn envelope on the floor and a note that said I would figure it out. Walter died when I was 28. I found him in his chair, peaceful, a crossword puzzle half finished on his lap. I buried him next to his wife and bought the house from his estate. I kept my old room exactly the way it was. Sometimes I still slept there when I needed to remember where I came from. Raymond retired at 62 and sold me 3 of his best properties at below market rates. You earned these, he said. I'm proud of who you became, Vernon. You could have let that abandonment make you bitter and cruel. Instead, you let it make you strong and kind. That's rare. On my 32nd birthday, I sat alone in my office looking at my laptop screen. I had a routine birthday, dinner with Raymond and his wife, a phone call from a few friends. Nothing special. Then I saw it. A Facebook friend request. Amber Davis, my sister. The request sat there glowing on my screen. Attached was a message. Hey Vernon, long time. We need to talk. It's important. About family. I stared at that message for 3 days before I accepted the request. I met Amber at a coffee shop in a nice part of town. The kind of place with exposed brick and expensive espresso drinks. I got there 15 minutes early and sat in the back corner where I could see the door. Old habits. Always know your exits. Amber walked in right on time. I almost didn't recognize her. The 21-year-old girl who used to scroll on her phone through family dinners was now 36, and the years had not been gentle. Her face was lined and tired. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. She saw me and her face did something complicated. Smile, guilt, hope, nervousness, all at once. Vernon, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. You look good. Really good. Amber. Silence stretched between us. I didn't offer to buy her coffee. I didn't ask how she had been. I just waited. She ordered a latte and spent a long time adding sugar to it, not meeting my eyes. Finally, she spoke. I guess I should start by saying I'm sorry. Okay. For what happened? For leaving you. For everything. I said nothing. She took a breath. You want to know what happened, right? Why we left? I figured it out a long time ago, I said. But sure. Tell me your version. Amber flinched at my tone but continued. Mom and Dad were in bad shape financially. Really bad. They had credit card debt, about $80,000. Dad had a gambling problem. Sports betting. Online poker. Mom knew, but she didn't stop him. They were looking at bankruptcy, maybe losing the house. The house was rented, I said. Right. But they were behind on rent too. Behind on everything. They decided the only way out was to disappear. Start over somewhere fresh with new identities. Arizona, I said. I had hired a private investigator years ago to find them. I knew where they went. Amber nodded, looking surprised. Yeah, Phoenix. They thought they could start clean. Dad got a job under the table. Mom too. They kept moving around, staying under the radar. And they took my $3,000 because they needed it more than I did. Amber looked down. They thought you would be okay. You always were the responsible one, the one who had it together. I was 17. I know it was wrong, Vernon. We all knew it was wrong. Justin cried for weeks. I felt sick about it. But what could I do? They're my parents. I was 21, broke, living with them. Where was I supposed to go? I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. You could have not stolen from a child. You could have left me my own money. You could have done a lot of things. Amber's eyes filled with tears. You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm not making excuses. I just want you to understand what happened. I understand perfectly. You all decided I was expendable. She cried quietly for a minute. I didn't comfort her. I sipped my coffee and waited. Things have been hard for us, she finally said. In Arizona. Dad couldn't keep jobs. He kept gambling. Mom's health got bad. Diabetes, high blood pressure. Justin got married young, had 2 kids by 25. He works at a warehouse now, barely making it. I got married too, but it didn't last. I have a daughter. She's 7. Congratulations. Amber wiped her eyes. We saw an article about you in a real estate investment magazine. It mentioned your name, your success story, how you built a property empire from nothing. There was a photo, so that was how they found me. Pride in my success had made me visible. Vernon, we're family, Amber said, leaning forward. We made mistakes, big mistakes, but you've done so well. You made something incredible. We need help. What kind of help? Mom and Dad want to move back to Pennsylvania. They're getting old. Mom's health is getting worse. They need to be somewhere with better medical care, closer to family. That's you, Vernon. You're all we have. What specifically do you want? Amber hesitated. Money. We need money for the move, for medical bills, for getting set up. Maybe $50,000 to start. Then a few thousand a month for living expenses, while they get on their feet. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A short, bitter laugh. You think this is funny? Amber asked, her expression shifting toward anger. I think it's incredibly predictable. You need money so you remembered I exist. We're your family, Vernon. We raised you for 17 years, fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. You owe us something. There it was. The truth under the apology. I owe you? I repeated slowly. Yeah, you do. Parents sacrifice for their kids. That's how it works. Now you're in a position to help, and you should. I thought about the nights I slept alone in that empty house at 17. About working 80 hours a week as a teenager. About missing college. About building everything I had with my own hands. I need time to think about this, I said. Amber's face brightened. Really? You'll consider it? I said I'll think about it. She reached across and grabbed my hand. I pulled away. Thank you, Vernon. Thank you so much. I knew you had a good heart. I knew you wouldn't turn your back on family. How much time do I have to decide? 2 weeks? We're really desperate, Vernon. Mom's medical bills are piling up. 2 weeks, I repeated. I stood to leave. Amber stood too. Can I hug you? No. Her face fell. Right. Okay. I'll call you in 2 weeks. Thank you for meeting me. This means everything. I walked out of the coffee shop and sat in my truck for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel. Then I called a private investigator I had used for tenant background checks. I need you to dig into some people for me. My family. I need to know everything. Financials, legal history, everything. The investigator called me back 3 days later. Vernon, you're going to want to sit down for this. My parents were not broke. They had received a $300,000 inheritance from my maternal grandmother 2 years ago when she died. Court records showed the inheritance was specifically structured to protect it from my father's gambling. The will had a clause mentioning that my grandmother was concerned about Greg's gambling problems. They had burned through most of that money. Casinos, online betting, bad investments. About $40,000 was left. They were not desperate. They were irresponsible. And they wanted my money to fund more of the same. The investigator found something else. 5 years ago, they had tried this same scam with another relative, a cousin on my mother's side. They had threatened legal action, claiming filial responsibility laws. The cousin had paid them $15,000 just to make them go away. I called my lawyer. They were not desperate. They were irresponsible. And they wanted my money to fund more of the same. My family was suing me. I sat at my kitchen table and read through the lawsuit. It was 23 pages of legal language, but the core was simple. They were suing me for filial responsibility and financial elder abuse by neglect. They claimed I had a legal obligation under Pennsylvania law to financially support my elderly parents. They were demanding $200,000 in back support plus $5,000 monthly going forward. The lawsuit painted a picture of me as a wealthy, selfish son who had abandoned his struggling parents in their time of need. It claimed my parents had fallen on hard times through no fault of their own. It said they had tried to reach out to me multiple times, and I had refused all contact. It said I was living in luxury while they suffered. All lies. Carefully constructed lies. My lawyer, Patricia Holbrook, was a family law specialist in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I had hired her immediately after getting the investigator's report. She read the lawsuit in her office while I sat across from her, my leg bouncing with nervous energy. "This is garbage," she finally said, tossing the papers on her desk. "But it's dangerous garbage. Filial responsibility laws are real in Pennsylvania. They're rarely enforced, but they exist. If we're not careful, if we don't fight this exactly right, you could lose. What do we do?" Patricia smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "We go on offense. We don't just defend against their claims. We attack. We file a countersuit for theft of your savings, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and fraudulent misrepresentation in their current lawsuit. We subpoena their financial records, which they'll have to provide, and we destroy their credibility piece by piece. Will that work? It will if you're willing to go all the way. This is going to get ugly, Vernon. They're going to drag you through the mud publicly. Are you ready for that?" I thought about the note, about being 17 and alone, about every single dollar I had earned and saved and built. "I'm ready." The local news picked up the story within days. "Millionaire son refuses to help struggling parents." The headline ran on 3 different news stations. They used an old photo of me from a business award ceremony, smiling in a suit. They used photos my family provided of my parents looking frail and sad. I started receiving hate mail. Messages on social media calling me selfish, heartless, ungrateful. People who knew nothing about the real story, making judgments based on a headline. Some of my business relationships became strained. A few property management companies quietly asked if I wanted to transfer my accounts elsewhere, worried about the negative publicity. Raymond called me. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better. The truth will come out, Vernon. Document everything. Truth is your weapon." Patricia filed our countersuit and subpoenaed their financial records. She also subpoenaed records from the Arizona courts, showing their previous attempt to extract money from my cousin. The private investigator went deeper. He found that my grandmother's will specifically mentioned protecting her inheritance from Greg's gambling. He found medical records showing my mother's health issues were manageable with medication, not the crisis they claimed. He found that Amber had a steady job she had not disclosed, and Justin had actually been sending me messages on social media for years that I had never seen because they went to my spam folder. Justin had been trying to reach me. I contacted Justin privately through a new email address the investigator provided. We met at a park on a cold Saturday morning in early November. He was 30 now, taller than I remembered, with the same nervous energy he had as a kid. He showed up in a worn jacket, looking around like he expected to be caught. When he saw me, he stopped walking. We stood 20 feet apart, two brothers who used to share a house, now strangers. "Vernon," he said quietly. "Justin." He walked closer, slowly. "I don't even know what to say. I've wanted to find you for so long. I got your old note, the one from when we left. You hid it in the trash." Justin's eyes filled with tears. I was so scared. "They made me pack my stuff and told me we were leaving. Dad said you were holding everyone back, that you were the reason we were in debt. He said you would be fine because you were always so responsible. Mom said you probably wanted us gone anyway." None of that was true. I know. I figured it out later. When I turned 18, I tried to find you. They told me you had moved away and wanted nothing to do with us. They showed me a fake email they said was from you, telling them all to leave you alone. I believed it for years, Vernon. I'm so sorry. We sat on a park bench. Justin told me everything. About the miserable years in Arizona. About Dad's gambling getting worse. About Mom's health problems that were real but not as severe as they claimed. About Amber's bitterness and entitlement. About his own struggles, working long hours at a warehouse, trying to support his wife and two kids. When they said they were going to sue you, I told them it was wrong, Justin said. I told them you didn't owe us anything after what they did. They said I was being disloyal. They wanted me to testify against you in court. They wanted me to say you were abusive growing up, that you were violent and angry. All lies. Will you testify for me instead? I asked. Will you tell the truth? Justin looked at me with 15 years of guilt and pain in his eyes. Yes, I'll tell the truth. I should have found you years ago. I should have stood up to them. I was a coward. You were a kid, just like I was. We both got screwed by them, Justin said. The difference is you made something of yourself anyway. I'm just barely surviving. That can change. After this is over, if you want, I'll help you. Job training, better work, whatever you need. But not them. Never them. Justin nodded. I don't want their money. I don't want anything from them. I just want my brother back. We sat in silence for a while. Then Justin asked, what was it like? After we left, I told him. The empty house, the stolen money, working 80 hours a week at 17, missing college, building everything from nothing. He cried while I talked. So did I. 2 days before the court hearing, Patricia received an anonymous package at her office. Inside was a stack of letters, old and yellowed, postmarked from 15 years ago. Letters my mother Linda had written to my father Greg during the year before they abandoned me. The letters were devastating. They discussed planning the abandonment for 18 months, debating whether to take Justin or leave him too, arguing about how much of my savings to take. In one letter, my mother wrote, Vernon's too good, too trusting. He'll be fine on his own. We need that 3,000 more than he does. He'll figure something out. Another letter. Maybe leaving him will be good for him. Make him tougher. He's too soft anyway. Patricia read them twice, then looked at me. Do you know who sent these? I have an idea. Justin never admitted it, but I knew. He had found those letters in our parents' storage and made sure the truth came out. The courtroom was going to be a battlefield, but now we had ammunition. The county courthouse was an old limestone building downtown with tall ceilings and wooden benches, worn smooth by decades of nervous people waiting for justice. I arrived 30 minutes early with Patricia. The courtroom was surprisingly full. Some media, curious onlookers, people who had followed the story in the news, and my people, Walter's nephew, who I had stayed in touch with, Raymond and his wife Claire sitting in the third row, giving me encouraging nods. 3 of my longtime tenants who had taken the day off work to support me, a retired teacher who rented a duplex from me and always said I was the best landlord she ever had. They came to stand with me. That meant everything. My family sat on the opposite side. My father Greg, now 62, thinner than I remembered, his hair completely gray. My mother Linda, 60, wearing a nice dress I suspected they bought specifically for court, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Amber, looking nervous and angry at the same time. Justin sat on my side of the courtroom. When my parents saw him, my father's face went dark red. My mother looked betrayed. Amber glared. The judge entered. The Honorable Sarah Brennan, a woman in her mid-60s with steel-gray hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense in her courtroom. All rise. We stood. Judge Brennan sat. We sat. She looked over her glasses at both sides. This is Davis versus Davis. Case number 4-7239. I've read the briefs. This is a filial responsibility claim and countersuit. Let's proceed. My parents' lawyer went first. His name was Donald Pierce, a man in his 50s with a cheap suit and a dramatic presentation style. He painted a picture of elderly, struggling parents who had done their best to raise their children and now found themselves abandoned in their time of need by a wealthy son who had forgotten where he came from. He called my father to the stand first. Greg took the oath and sat down, looking humble and sad. Mr. Davis, can you tell the court about your relationship with your son Vernon? My father spoke slowly, carefully. We raised Vernon from birth. We provided for him. We loved him. Things got difficult financially when he was in high school. We had to make some hard decisions. We moved to Arizona for work opportunities. Vernon was almost 18, and we thought he was capable of handling himself for a short time until we got settled and could bring him out to join us. A lie. Smooth and practiced. Did you maintain contact with Vernon after the move? We tried. We called. We wrote. But Vernon was angry. He cut us off, refused our calls. We respected his need for space, thinking he would come around eventually. Another lie. And now, years later, you're asking for help because my health is failing. My wife's health is worse. We've struggled financially for years. When we learned Vernon had become successful, we reached out hoping he would help his parents in their time of need. Instead, he refused. It broke our hearts. Pierce nodded sympathetically. No further questions. Patricia stood for cross-examination. She didn't smile. Mr. Davis, you said you moved to Arizona for work opportunities. What work did you find there? My father hesitated. Various jobs. It was difficult. Can you name one employer you worked for in the last 15 years in Arizona? Silence. Mr. Davis, I asked you a question. I worked under the table mostly. Cash jobs. So you evaded taxes? I did what I had to do to survive. Patricia walked to her table and picked up a document. This is a bank statement from your account 2 years ago, showing a deposit of $300,000. Where did that money come from? My father's face went pale. My mother-in-law's inheritance. And where is that money now? We had expenses. $300,000 in expenses in 2 years? Can you detail those expenses? My father stammered. Pierce objected. Judge Brennan overruled. Patricia continued, relentless. Isn't it true that you gambled away most of that inheritance? That you have a gambling addiction you've refused to address? I don't have to answer that. Actually, you do. You're under oath. My father glared. I made some bets. That's not illegal. Patricia showed the bank records to the judge, then turned back to my father. You said you tried to maintain contact with Vernon after moving. How many times did you call him in the first year after you left? I don't remember exactly. 0 times. Because your phone was disconnected. You cut off all contact deliberately, didn't you? We needed a fresh start. You left your 17-year-old son alone with a note. Is that correct? My father's jaw tightened. He was almost 18. Did you leave him any money? Silence. Mr. Davis, did you leave Vernon any money when you abandoned him? We left him the house for a few more weeks. A house you didn't own. A rental. Did you leave him any money? More silence. Patricia's voice went cold. In fact, you didn't just leave him no money. You took his money. You stole $3,000 from your son's college savings before you left. Isn't that true? My father looked at his lawyer. Pierce looked worried. Mr. Davis, answer the question. We needed it, my father finally said. We were desperate, the courtroom murmured. Judge Brennan banged her gavel once. Patricia walked back to her table. No further questions for this witness. My mother, Linda, was called next. She cried through most of her testimony, talked about being a devoted mother, about struggling with health problems, about just wanting to be close to her son again. Patricia's cross-examination was just as brutal. She presented the letters. My mother tried to deny writing them, but Patricia had brought a handwriting expert who confirmed authenticity. The letters were entered into evidence and read aloud. When the court heard my mother's own words, "Vernon's too good, too trusting. He'll be fine on his own. We need that $3,000 more than he does." Several people in the gallery shook their heads in disgust. Amber testified next. She tried to paint me as cold and resentful, someone who always had anger issues and resented the family. Patricia's cross-examination was just as brutal. She presented the letters. My mother tried to deny writing them, but Patricia had brought a handwriting expert who confirmed authenticity. The letters were entered into evidence and read aloud. Patricia destroyed her credibility by showing Amber's own Facebook messages to friends from 15 years ago. Messages where Amber complained about leaving my baby brother behind and feeling sick about what we're doing to Vernon. After the break, Patricia called me to the stand. By lunchtime, my family's case was falling apart. I took the oath and sat down. My hands were shaking. I gripped the armrests to steady them. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. The courtroom was absolutely silent while I spoke. When I finished, Patricia asked, "Vernon, in 15 years, did your parents ever try to contact you before they learned you had become financially successful?" "No." "Did they ever apologize for abandoning you?" "No." "Did they ever offer to return the money they stole?" "No." "Why do you think they're here now?" I looked at my parents. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother was crying into her tissue. "They're here because they ran out of other people's money, and they think I'm an easy target." Pierce objected. Judge Brennan overruled. Patricia called Justin next. My brother walked to the stand, visibly shaking. He looked at our parents once, then looked away. He told the truth, all of it, about being forced to leave, about the lies he was told about me, about the fake email they showed him, about them pressuring him to testify falsely. My mother sobbed loudly. My father's face was bright red. Amber looked stunned. Patricia called character witnesses. Walter's nephew described how Walter took me in and how hard I worked. Raymond described mentoring me, watching me build a business with integrity. 3 tenants testified that I was fair, kind, and went out of my way to help them when they struggled. 1 tenant, an older woman named Ruth, cried while she testified. "When my husband died last year, I couldn't make rent for 3 months. Vernon told me not to worry about it, just pay when I could. He came and fixed my heater himself in January when it broke. Didn't charge me. This man has a good heart. He didn't learn that from them." Patricia presented the private investigator's findings. The previous lawsuit against my cousin, the gambling records, the inheritance records, the medical records showing my mother's conditions were manageable, not critical. She presented bank records showing my parents still had $40,000 in assets but were claiming poverty. She presented everything. By the time Patricia rested our case, there was nothing left of my parents' claims but lies and ashes. Judge Brennan called a 15-minute recess. When we returned, she looked tired. "Does the plaintiff's counsel have any rebuttal?" Pierce stood. "Your Honor, we would like to withdraw certain claims and discuss settlement." "Too late for that, Counselor." "Sit down." Pierce sat. Before Judge Brennan could speak, Amber suddenly stood up from her seat in the gallery. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "He owes us. We gave him life. We raised him. He wouldn't exist without us. All we're asking for is a little help, and he's acting like we're criminals." Judge Brennan banged her gavel hard. "Miss Davis, you will sit down and be quiet, or I will have you removed from my courtroom. This is so unfair. He has millions and we have nothing. How is that right?" Bailiff, remove Miss Davis from the courtroom. She's held in contempt. $500 fine. The bailiff escorted a screaming Amber out. Her outburst had destroyed any remaining sympathy the judge might have had. Judge Brennan looked at my parents with something close to disgust. "I'm ready to rule." Judge Brennan arranged the papers in front of her and looked directly at my parents. "I've been on this bench for 19 years. I've seen a lot of cases, a lot of family disputes. But this case is particularly troubling to me." She paused, looking at her notes. "The filial responsibility law in Pennsylvania exists to prevent elderly parents from becoming wards of the state when they cannot care for themselves. It is meant to be a last resort, applied in extreme circumstances where parents are destitute through no fault of their own, and their children have the means to help." My father sat up straighter, looking hopeful. "This is not that case," Judge Brennan continued, and my father's face fell. "This is a case of parents who made a calculated, cruel decision to abandon their minor child, who stole from that child, who cut off all contact and left him to fend for himself at an age when most children are still living at home and planning for college, who never apologized, never made amends, and never showed any interest in reconciliation until they discovered he had become financially successful." She looked at me. Mr. Vernon Davis was 17 years old when his parents abandoned him with nothing but a note. He worked multiple jobs while finishing high school. He was forced to forego college because his parents stole his savings and refused to provide the tax information necessary for him to obtain financial aid. Despite these obstacles, he built a successful business through hard work, integrity, and perseverance. She turned back to my parents. "You claim he owes you for raising him for 17 years. But raising your child is not a loan to be repaid. It is your obligation as parents. You don't get credit for doing the bare minimum that the law requires." My mother was crying. My father stared at the table. "Furthermore, the evidence shows you are not destitute. You received a substantial inheritance which you squandered through gambling. You have assets you failed to disclose. You have a history of using legal threats to extract money from relatives. Your claim that Mr. Davis abandoned you is contradicted by the fact that you abandoned him first and maintained no contact for 15 years. Judge Brennan's voice hardened. "The filial responsibility law is not a tool for irresponsible parents to shake down successful children they previously discarded. This lawsuit is not brought in good faith. It is brought in greed." She looked at her ruling. "I hereby dismiss the plaintiff's claims in their entirety with prejudice, meaning they cannot be refiled. The plaintiff's lawsuit is found to be frivolous and brought in bad faith." My lawyer squeezed my hand under the table. "As to the defendant's counterclaims, I rule in favor of Vernon Davis on all counts." She listed them one by one. "On the claim of theft, I find that the plaintiffs did unlawfully take $3,000 belonging to Vernon Davis. With 15 years of interest at the statutory rate, that amount is now $8,500. The plaintiffs are ordered to pay this amount to Vernon Davis within 90 days. My father's face went white. "On the claim of intentional infliction of emotional distress, I find the plaintiff's conduct in abandoning their minor child was extreme and outrageous. However, the statute of limitations has expired on this claim. No damages awarded, but the finding stands as a matter of record. On the claim of fraudulent misrepresentation in bringing this lawsuit, I find the plaintiffs knowingly made false statements to this court regarding their financial status and their relationship with Vernon Davis. As a sanction, the plaintiffs are ordered to pay Vernon Davis's legal fees in full. Patricia had charged me $42,000 for this case. My parents would have to pay it all. Additionally, I am issuing a permanent restraining order. The plaintiffs are prohibited from contacting Vernon Davis directly or indirectly except through legal counsel for matters related to this judgment. Any violation will result in contempt charges and possible jail time." Judge Brennan removed her glasses and looked at my parents with something that might have been pity, but looked more like contempt. "Let me be very clear. Family bonds are important. Parents generally deserve respect and consideration from their children, but those bonds are built on love, sacrifice, and mutual support. You severed those bonds 15 years ago when you chose to abandon your son. You don't get to claim them now because it's financially convenient. She turned to me. Mr. Davis, you have no legal or moral obligation to support these people. You owe them nothing. What you have built, you built in spite of them, not because of them. I hope you continue to use your success to help others, as the evidence shows you have been doing. But you are under no obligation to help those who harmed you. She banged her gavel. This case is closed. Court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Media rushed out to file their stories. My supporters surrounded me, hugging me, congratulating me. Raymond had tears in his eyes. Ruth, the tenant who testified, gripped my hand and said, "Justice." My parents sat at their table, looking small and defeated. Their lawyer was packing up quickly, probably planning to bill them for a case he knew he couldn't win. Amber had been escorted out earlier. Justin stood apart from our parents, looking at them with something between anger and sadness. Patricia handed me a tissue. I didn't realize I was crying. "You won," she said simply. Complete victory. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded me. Cameras, microphones, reporters, shouting questions. Patricia had warned me this would happen. We had prepared a statement. I stood on the courthouse steps and read from the paper Patricia had helped me write. Today the court recognized what I've known for 15 years. Family is supposed to be about love, support, and sacrifice. What I learned at 17 is that real family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when things get hard. I looked up from the paper, speaking from my heart now. Walter showed up when he rented me a room and taught me a trade. Raymond showed up when he gave me a job and taught me his business. My tenants showed up today to support me. My brother Justin showed up to tell the truth even though it cost him his relationship with our parents. That's family. Those are the people who matter. The cameras clicked and flashed. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you. Patricia guided me through the crowd to my truck. As we drove away, I saw my parents standing on the courthouse steps, alone watching me leave. I felt no satisfaction in their defeat, no joy in their pain, just a quiet sense of closure. Justin called me that evening. "Can we meet?" We met at the same park where we'd talked before. It was getting dark, cold, the first real cold of winter coming in. "I'm done with them," Justin said without preamble. "After today, after seeing them lie on the stand, after watching them try to destroy you, I'm done. I told them I never want to see them again." "That's your choice to make," I said. "I won't tell you how to handle it. I want to know my brother. I want to be a real part of your life, if you'll let me. Not for money. I don't want your money. I just want family. Real family." I thought about it. About trust and risk and second chances. "I'd like that," I said. "But we start slow. We build it over time. That's fair." Over the next 6 months, Justin and I rebuilt our relationship. I helped him get training in property management. I offered him a job managing some of my properties, but at a fair market salary, not charity. He worked hard, proved himself, and eventually I made him a partner in the business. Justin's kids, my niece and nephew who I had never met, called me Uncle Vernon. They were good kids. Their dad was raising them right. I never heard from my parents or Amber again. The restraining order held. They paid the judgment in installments, bitter and slow, but they paid. The news coverage shifted after the trial. The true story came out. I received hundreds of messages from people who had been through similar situations: abandoned children, stolen inheritances, families who only showed up when there was money to take. One message stood out. It was from a 19-year-old kid in Ohio whose parents had kicked him out and taken his savings. He asked me how I survived. I thought about that question for a long time before I answered. I told him what Raymond had told me, that real estate isn't about getting rich quick, that it's about patience, consistency, and treating people right. But I also told him the deeper truth. They tried to break you by leaving you with nothing. What they don't understand is that having nothing means you have everything to build. No one can take your work ethic, your integrity, or your will to survive. Those are yours, and those are enough. 6 months after the trial, I established the Figure It Out Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping teenagers aging out of foster care or facing family abandonment. We provide housing assistance, job training, mentorship, and educational support. The Foundation's motto: when they leave you behind, we help you move forward. I hired 3 full-time staff members, all people who had been through similar situations. We helped 47 young people in our first year, found them housing, connected them with jobs, paired them with mentors who actually showed up. Walter would have been proud. Raymond was proud. He and Claire volunteered with the Foundation, mentoring kids who reminded them of me at 17. I started dating again too. Her name was Beth. She was a social worker who connected me with the Foundation idea. We met at a nonprofit conference where I was speaking about second chances. She had dark hair, kind eyes, and a laugh that made me feel lighter. "You have a good heart," she told me on our 3rd date. "You could have let what happened make you bitter. Instead, you let it make you better." "Someone told me that once," I said, thinking of Raymond. "I'm just trying to live up to it." Now, I sit in my office looking at a framed photograph. It's me at 17 with Walter, the day I moved into his rented room. I look young and scared and trying to be brave. Walter has his hand on my shoulder, this old man who didn't have to help but did anyway. I keep that photo where I can see it every day. It reminds me where I came from, what I survived, who helped me. The note my mother left said I would figure it out. It was meant to be cruel, dismissive, an abdication of responsibility. But I turned those words into truth. I did figure it out. Not because of them, but despite them. I figured out that family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shows up when you're broken and helps you rebuild. I figured out that strength isn't never falling down. It's getting up when no one's there to help you, dusting yourself off, and building something beautiful from the rubble they left behind. I figured out that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's construction. Building a life so full of meaning and purpose that their abandonment becomes irrelevant. I didn't just survive. I built a life they could never touch, never claim, never take. A life filled with people who chose to be there, not people obligated by blood. A life dedicated to making sure other kids don't have to go through what I went through alone. And that's the greatest success of all. Not the money, not the properties, not the court victory. The success is in becoming someone who breaks cycles instead of perpetuating them. Someone who shows up for others the way Walter and Raymond showed up for me. They tried to leave me with nothing. Instead, they gave me the greatest gift, though they never meant to. They gave me the freedom to build my own family, my own values, my own definition of success. They gave me empathy for everyone who's been abandoned, used, or discarded, and I used that gift to build something that actually matters. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family members for your own well-being? How did you find the strength to walk away and build your own path? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength in impossible situations. And share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they're not alone, that survival is possible, and that sometimes the family you build is stronger than the family you're born into. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that no matter what you're facing, no matter who has given up on you, you have the power to figure it out. You have the power to build something beautiful. You have the power to rewrite your ending. Stay strong, keep building, and remember, the best way forward is always through.